Hey everyone, you're watching DeFi Talks with DeFi Dad. Hey, thanks for tuning in. It's Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. Per usual with DeFi Talks, we're going to get to learn about a brand new DeFi product that recently launched and from a very reputable team. I think one of the most important money Legos that was created over the last few years. So we have with us Robert Lauko, who is the founder of Liquidity. And we have a longtime DeFi educator, investor builder, and now head of DeFi strategy at Liquidity, TokenBrice. So guys, thanks for joining me. How are you both doing?
Yeah, hey, thanks for having us. I'm feeling excited to talk about Liquidity and also our new latest project, Chicken Bonds.
Hi, yeah, same here. Glad to be there to talk about Chicken Bonds.
Yeah, it's funny. Before we got started, per usual, I was talking a lot to them and just kind of catching up. And yeah, it's funny because Liquidity we're going to actually talk a bit about, what is Liquidity in case you're totally new. Liquidity recently got a lot of attention for being, I think arguably one of the only, if not one of the most decentralized stable coins that's backed only by Ether, and why that's powerful. And then more importantly, we're going to talk about this new product called Chicken Bonds. And I'm going to let the guys here, of course, tell the story of what it is, the problem it solves, and how it works. So before we do that and we start to screen share a bit, would you both want to share a bit about your background? Maybe start with Robert, just a bit about who you are and how you got started with building Liquidity, and then we can talk a bit about how Bryce joined the team as well.
Sure. So I'm Robert. I'm the founder or co-founder of Liquidity. I previously worked as a researcher at the DeFi Foundation, which recently built the internet computer. But before that, I was working as a lawyer, so I have a legal background. But I always had a keen interest in everything related to computer science. I did a lot of leisure projects in my youth, and then when blockchain became a thing, and I was basically at the right place in the right time because I lived in the crypto valley in Switzerland. And when I first heard about basically Vitalik coming to my hometown and establishing Ethereum there, I got fully fascinated and started doing my own research. And yeah, that's how everything got started. And 2.5 years ago, I basically quit DeFi, my first job in the space, to found Liquidity, the interest-free borrowing system.
You're muted, it seems.
Oh, my bad. I was going to say, and we'll talk a little bit more about Liquidity in a sec. But Bryce, share your background. I know you've, like I said, you've been in DeFi since the beginning.
Yeah. So let's say I come more from the community, personal investor side of DeFi. So I started, a few years ago, just being interested about cryptocurrencies, and quickly my interest centered around more Ethereum and what was happening with DeFi back then. It was the very first day, the beginning of liquidity mining, for instance. And so it was really fascinating to follow it live. And I got involved with a few projects as the time went. And about 6 months ago, a little less maybe, I joined Liquidity. It was just a very, let's say, a very good fit, because I've been covering Liquidity quite heavily in my content already, well before joining the team. So when I saw they published a job offer it was head of growth back then, I applied instantly. Turned out my job is not exactly what we pictured as head of growth. It's more, as we were saying earlier, a role of that is a bit hard to define because it's so recent, but we call it DeFi strategist at Liquidity. And it's essentially handling everything related to Liquidity's relationship, partnership, collaboration with other protocols. So a lot of petitioning on other DAOs. and then things related to the liquidity strategy on Liquidity's token, so LUSD and QTY.
Awesome. So, Robert, do you want to give us the highlights of some of the innovations behind Liquidity? Like basically what differentiates it as a protocol? And then, yeah, I'd love to then we can start to talk more about, why Chicken Bonds made sense as a product to build alongside this.
Sure. So it all started when I delved a bit into the existing DeFi protocols back then, which were basically Compound and Maker. And I realized that they had a few issues, or at least angles that I wanted to do differently. One was the fact that they weren't as capital efficient as they could be due to their liquidation mechanism. So with Liquidity, we introduced the stability pool as an instant liquidation mechanism that also allows people who are not actively monitoring the loans or the borrowers to be part of the liquidation incentive mechanism. So that was one of the innovations. And the other angle was related to the decentralization aspect. So we wanted to build a system which is fully decentralized and not just a little bit. And we did that on every angle. Like we only take Ether as the sole collateral type, and we made the system fully immutable and governance free, so nobody can now interfere with it. And last but not least, we also made it so that we are not running our own front end, but there is a built-in incentive mechanism that encourages third parties to offer a front end or gateway to the protocol. And last but not least, the whole system is interest free. So when you take out a loan in Liquidity, you would only pay a one-off fee, but no recurrent fee or interest.
Can you talk, either of you, could you talk a little bit about what the stability pool is and why that's so important to the way Liquidity works?
Yeah, so, or
as you want. It's actually like my favorite part of Liquidity. So
go ahead.
maybe I can start and you build on top of it, right? It's really interesting because it's a way of supplying the capital required for liquidations and enabling anybody to partake into this activity that on Maker, Avi, or Compound is done more. It's done by using by liquidators that provide their own capital. So it's an interesting aspect, and essentially it's just a pool where users can stake their LUSD, and they get a set allocation of Liquidity tokens, but they are also providing capital, as I was saying, for liquidation. So potentially a share of their LUSD can be converted to ETH. However, it happens usually at a very favorable price, when at close to the bottom of the V, essentially, when the bulk of the liquidation happens. So yeah, it's a really cool mechanism, both from the user side, provides an interesting way to essentially have a sort of buying option into ETH from your LUSD, plus making some yield. And at a protocol level, it enables faster liquidations that you would see elsewhere and more streamlined. And this is part of what enables Liquidity to be more permissive in terms of loan to value than what you will see on other protocols. It's simply because the liquidations are a bit more efficient.
Yeah, and Liquidity has been through some major stress tests now with the market crash we went through. With I think Ether was down at most like 82, 85%. So we were able to actually see the liquidation engine under a lot of stress. Now, if you're in the stability pool with LUSD, can you remind me, I'm earning fees in ETH, or is that what it would be denominated in over time?
So you get both Liquidity tokens over time. It's just a set budget shared, in pro rata of your ownership of the stability pool. And then you get ETH, and that's from the liquidations. So that's when your LUSD are used to liquidate a trove. So it really depends of the activity. It's very spiky, as you would imagine. So most of the time the baseline is not much is happening, but then a few days a lot is happening. Like we've seen a day with $60 million trove being liquidated. That was like 1/4 of the total LUSD in existence back then. So it's like not a small event, but then for some days not much will happen. really
But yeah,
depends
This
on
is the
his price.
difference between years ago when so 2018, let's say 2017, 2018, 2019, 2018, 2019 being really bloody years in the last bear market. We would all, watch as all the liquidations would happen on centralized exchanges. Now, since so much economic activity has shifted on chain to what, we would all put under the umbrella as DeFi, this is one, even on a day where, market prices are down, if you're in LUSD, if you're in that stability pool, you're actually contributing to, securing the protocol, ensuring that liquidations can happen. You're strengthening. I would say you're strengthening, confidence in LUSD's peg, and from a mathematical standpoint as well. So yeah, it's a feel good story, I would say, and it's worth noting the yield. This is not a recommendation or endorsement that you make any financial decisions or get into the stability pool, but worth noting, it's around like 5.6% APR. So, that's pretty competitive stablecoin yield to be earning, especially considering what you're exposed to, how battle tested the protocol is. Robert, anything else there to add in terms of highlights of Liquidity and what it actually does as a protocol?
Yeah, maybe just like the functionality of the LQTY token, which you would get as a stability depositor continuously paid out, which is, I guess, the lion's share of the APR that you mentioned. And this token is there to capture the fee revenue. We have the borrow fee, an upfront fee, and we also have a redemption fee, which is less significant. But both of those fees, they are paid out to whoever is staking the LQTY token. So 100% of the fees goes to the LQTY stakers. Now there is another fun angle to it, which is, or the front ends, they are incentivized as well. And that works that in a way that they can basically set a kickback rate. And through that kickback rate, a part of the LQTY that would normally go to the stability depositor would then be funneled to the front end through which the stability deposits are made. So by that mechanism, the front end operators have a vested interest to drive the turnover towards the system because they can benefit from this income.
So would either of you want to start to guide us through what are chicken bonds? And I'd like to talk a bit about, what is the problem that you're solving for? What prompted you to create the product? Also, at any point here, you just let me know. Happy to start to share Bryce's screen, and we can, use some of the visuals on the website.
Yeah, we can even share some data about Liquidity if you just want to wrap up on it. We have a neat dashboard to kind of see the overview of the protocol.
Yeah, let's do that. Here we go.
So,
let me show that. Okay, so this is data on Liquidity, the protocol.
Yeah, so it's just covering the main metrics. So for instance, you can see the LUSD supply and the number of throws, which are quite correlated. And it kind of tells you a bit about its price history too. So back when we launched, people were still very bullish on it, and the price was appreciating a lot. But then it was the beginning of, bear market essentially. So you can really see it on the LUSD supply that shrunk since then. You also have some metrics on the various staking API. So the stability pool is here. And same here, you can see the spikes when there are waves of spikes of liquidations, essentially. And the liquidity staking API, that is a little bit less spiky and spikes more when there is overall bullishness, because most of the fee is coming from the initiation fee when people borrow. And yeah, some other cool stats on...
Is there a chart of how much LUSD has been created over time?
Oh yeah, it's right here. The total LUSD supply.
Very cool. And how much is there today, or as of
around
that
170 chart? Million? Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, and again, like Liquidity really has seen, I would say, a boost in interest. I'm not sure how to compare it to like the height of the bull run, but what is always a good sign during a crypto bear market is there's a return to fundamentals, a flight to quality, and I think like you start to appreciate again what holds up under the worst sort of stress testing, and so that this has been a really great story to tell of arguably one of the most, if not the most, decentralized stablecoin designs. Guys, should we then shift over to chicken bonds?
Sure.
Yeah, maybe I can start with some like ideas, like, or how I kind of like
Yes.
came up with it, and then I let Brice take over. So basically, it all emerged as kind of like a side project from a bigger research that we were doing basically last year or end of last year. And between New Year and, or between, over the Christmas period, I basically had this idea that we could build a system that would allow to acquire protocol on liquidity through a novel bonding mechanism. And this protocol on liquidity could then be used for multiple purposes and also be used for stabilizing the peg now for the LUSD, which has seen some issues lately. But the whole system is kind of based on a novel bonding mechanism, which, and that's where the name comes from, which always allows people who are bonded or still in a pending phase of their bond, which allows them to chicken out and take back their principal. So it's basically an escape hatch for people who are not maybe comfortable with like fully committing from the start. So what they can do is basically bond LUSD, wait some time during which they will accrue another token, the boosted LUSD or BLUSD. And at any point in time, they can decide to, what I mentioned, chicken out, or what's more interesting, to chicken in, which basically is a conversion. So they convert or they leave the amount of LUSD they bonded to the system in return for the currently accrued amount of BLUSD. And of course, people would only do that if the BLUSD they get in return is worth more than the LUSD. And to achieve that, there is a bit like more complicated mechanism under the hood with like multiple buckets of pending bonds and other types of liquidity already acquired by the system, which makes sure that the total yield that can be captured inside this novel BLUSD token is higher than the base yield for the LUSD. And thanks to this yield amplification, we expect the BLUSD to trade above the LUSD. So there will be like a price premium, which factors in this additional yield. And this price premium, again, is the driver for bonding, because when you bond, you basically rely on a premium. And as long as we have this premium, bonding should be attractive. And the more people bond, the higher should the premium become, which kind of creates a nice flywheel effect between bonding and just holding the BLUSD token, which accumulates and auto-compounds the underlying yield.
I love the chicken branding behind all of this, by the way. Like day one, when I looked at chickenbonds.org, I was just like, I don't know if you had an artist do this or if it was one of you like being a wizard and using some simple design there, but it's really fun. Would either of you then want to walk through the diagram here? I think, Robert, you started to tell the story of it. I think like, I'd love to kind of cover more of like what happens under the hood. Normally, if I have LUSD, I might hold it as just like a stable coin, as like a medium of exchange. I might normally put it into the stability pool. But in this case, this is a new sort of like yield opportunity. And so let's assume that I'm going to create a bond myself, and I would then exchange LUSD for BULSD by creating the bond. Or am I minting it? Is that maybe the proper term?
Not exactly. So I'm showing on the screen right now. We can actually go through the creation of a bond.
Oh, perfect. There we go.
But so essentially what happens when you create a bond is you will get an NFT that represents your deposit. And so you can see here I have a few. I have 5 different eggs. And you owning the NFT means you accrue BLUSD over time. So you see here 100 LUSD bond I created yesterday that has accrued so far about 17 BLUSD. So I need to wait, obviously, a bit more for it to be interesting in terms of return. mean, those are small amounts, so I did it more for the egg and the fun of it. But yeah. So we can create a bond if you want to kind of see the process.
Yeah,
but
let's
pretty
do that.
straightforward.
Let's
So
do
a
that.
cool thing too for people using the app is it implements permit. So I don't know if you see my MetaMask thing on the screen, but
I do.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So as you've seen on the first message, there was no allow. It was a permit, so no gas, just signing a message.
I love it.
But then, yeah, the markets gas price is a bit higher.
I was gonna say
lately.
they're always high when you want to do like a demo.
Exactly. So I
as
put it at
opposed to
15.
last night.
Let's
Yeah.
cross finger.
Yeah.
It's at 18 right now. Maybe I'll get lucky. But yeah, so when you bond, you get an egg NFT that is generated at the time of the bond. And they have different properties and kind of different rarities. So this one is the most interesting one I got on this address, where, as you can see, it features a golden egg. It's really
That's
funny
cool.
because, one point we haven't really touched much yet, but is that the chicken bonds are essentially both a DeFi protocol and a generative NFT collection. The two go hand in hand. And so, you can simply follow the activity of what's happening with the bonding by tracking the bond collection on OpenSea. So I'm showing you on the screen right now, but for instance, this guy, got a nice pool, so it's a big bond of 200,000, and he got a rainbow border. You have different variations, and so this is just the first stage of the NFT. The NFT will get to evolve when people will chicken in and chicken out. So right now the system is in a bootstrapping period, but then we'll start to see chickens popping up in the collection too.
Bryce, could you go back to either the diagram or the other screen? So let's pretend I've created a bond, and you've actually created quite a few already. So you have all this BLUSD, you're earning more of it. What else would I then be considering next? Like, I guess I have an option, of course, of chickening out and withdrawing at any point. But like, what's some of the I'm thinking of like the decision tree, in my head of like, okay, am I going to stay in? How much have I earned? If I leave right now, am I losing any of my principal?
So yeah, this is what I really like about. Oh, sorry.
Or you want to go ahead? Yeah. So I think the main consideration for you is basically what you have already accrued, the BLUSD amount, and of course the market price of it, which will fluctuate. And you will want to time your chicken in a way that you can maximize your earning, which of course depends on the curve, like how this BLUSD is accrued over time, because it starts very steep, and then it kind of flattens over time. So you won't accrue at the same rate over your bonding period. While on the other hand, the price of your BLUSD that you have been accruing will fluctuate. So you will try to estimate to be like in a good place to estimate the price, and then decide whether you want to chicken in now or maybe wait a bit longer. And what you do next, and maybe Brice can cover that once you have your BLUSD, but
yeah, maybe just to add to it in terms of really like your question about the decision tree. What is really cool with chicken bonds is you have this escape hatch, as Robert was calling it, of the chicken out that is available essentially anytime as long as you haven't chickened in. So it's a binary decision. It's one or the other, and so it makes creating a bond pretty much risk-free, because at any time you can recover the full amount. So here I'm showing you on screen, this is a 100 LUSD bond. If I chicken out on this one, I will recover my 100 LUSD. So just as much as I put in, but I forgo what it has accumulated in BUSD so far. So it's really a cool mechanism to ensure everybody can just escape if needed, especially if you consider that those LUSD you're putting in chicken bonds might be coming from a trove, so a debt. So people might need them to repay the debt. But no, once they've waited enough for the the return of the bond to be interesting, they can claim it. And that's the exact opposite of chickening in, so or canceling the bond. So when you cancel the bond, you forego the BLUSD to get the LUSD. And when you claim the bond or you chicken in, you forego the bonded LUSD to the system, and you get in exchange the BLUSD.
So if I deposit 100, just like you did a moment ago, is there any scenario where I could walk away with less than 100? Like I can withdraw it at, I guess, at any point, but yeah, anything to make users aware of, like beware, like you could lose a part of your principal if this happens.
So it really depends of what they do. Of course, we cannot protect them from everything, but yeah, this is where the chicken out comes into play. Whatever happens with the price of BLUSD, as long as you haven't chickened in yet, you can always chicken out and recover the full principal. And then, you know, when it comes to chicken in, you can simply wait for the pool to be live and see what happens there. And so essentially, creating a bond gives you a lot of optionality because of this chicken out. It's a very efficient protection mechanism. And the only cost there is to create a bond and just waiting for it to mature is the lost opportunity cost of capital. You know, the yield you could have been making if you parked your LUSD somewhere else. But so in that sense, it's pretty much like pulled together, where because of the chicken out, the principal is not at risk. What is at play here is the yield your principal generates.
And maybe just to go a bit more into detail, maybe if we can go back to the diagram that you showed at the beginning, Brice,
Sure.
with the 3 buckets. I mean, that may be interesting. And going back to the question, I think you had DeFi Dad about like how the whole system works under the hood. So what really happens when people bond is that they will be giving their yield away to the system, like pool together. So this bonding bucket basically here on the left-hand side represents all the pending bonds. And this yield is captured and sent to the reserve bucket. So the reserve bucket earns its own yield as well as the yield from the bonding bucket. And there is also a permanent bucket, which I can maybe say a few words about later, but this permanent bucket is also kind of sending its yield to the reserve. Now, what's important to know is that the BLUSD token can be redeemed for a pro rata share of the reserve bucket. By redeeming, I mean you can burn a share of or a number of BLUSD tokens, and you will get back a proportional share of the whatever is in the reserve, like you get LUSD. And this creates a price floor. So this means that whenever the BLUSD price drops below the pro rata value of the reserve, you can make an arbitrage gain by redeeming. So this should kind of already make sure that the BLUSD should never fall below the LUSD in price. But on top of that, the fact that the reserve kind of not just earns its own yield, but an amplified yield, means that this kind of price floor will grow faster than from just the simple yield that would be generated by the reserve. And this is this yield amplification I mentioned before, which will hopefully, or that's what we expect, lead to a nice premium on the BLUSD price compared to the LUSD. And this drives the whole flywheel.
And what you've done here is you created the product to, you know, I guess benefit the Liquidity protocol, you know, to be able to bootstrap more liquidity, to strengthen the LUSD peg. But this product, Chicken Bonds, could be used by other yield-bearing tokens, right?
Yeah, that's part of the vision we had. But for now, the idea was really to first try out the mechanism with LUSD. Right. You know, it's quite novel on several dimensions. The bonding aspect, the NFT side. So we wanted to validate first that there was interest for such a model before thinking too heavily about how we generalize it. But yeah, of course, it's part of the plan eventually. But we'll communicate more on a potential generalized version when we have a more precise idea of what it is. But the vision is, this I can say, is to to essentially do a tryout instance where, so the LUSD Chicken Bonds were a way to verify product market fit, essentially, let's say. And then we pictured for the generalized version, we will also test it with another token. And this time, not a stable coin, but the LQTY token instead.
There's also a chance in the future that something like BLUSD, if this continues to grow in liquidity and is adopted by lots of users, that this could be another form of collateral that we could be using on a money market like Aave, right?
Yeah, that's a very good point, because I think it really has this price floor which kind of already gives you the maximal loan amount that you can take out. So it gives this security to the lending platform or to the lenders that you can always get out a minimum value from a liquidation of this BLUSD, which is, I think, a very nice property. Not just that it grows, but also that you can kind of maximize your loan to value ratio based on this inherent and growing value.
So to maybe summarize this and wrap up, if I were to go to chickenbonds.org, I can find one of the front ends that support Liquidity, and in this case, Chicken Bonds. And then if I end up creating a bond, the next date that I would look to, depending on what your break-even time is, but there is a rebond time that comes on November 5th. And that rebond time, am I right to say, like, whether I create a bond this week or next week, November 5th is this sort of like next milestone for the protocol?
So it's the time at which the first bonders would be in a position where it's interesting for them to rebound. So rebounding is claiming the bond, claiming the BLUSD, and then swapping them back to LUSD with a profit compared to the initially invested amount, and then recreating another bigger bond with this LUSD balance.
Got it. Is there any period in between the rebond and what would be like the next rebond time, like when folks may be claiming that BLUSD? I guess, is there any sort of like delay before we'll know like what's the next time frame? Is it another 30 days out or something like that?
Yeah, so maybe Robert can add some more specifications to this, but essentially right now we are in a bit of a bootstrap period, as we call it, where since BLUSD accrues over time and the protocol launched yesterday, right now there's simply not enough BLUSD to have a liquidity or anything like that. So what we have as the market price, so 129 LUSD, is an informed hypothesis, let's say, based on modeling, research, and so on. But it's still a bit of a virtual price because there is no liquidity pool yet. So as the weeks go by and we exit out of the bootstrap period and the liquidity pool on Curve starts to get funded, we'll have an actual market price for BLUSD, and that would allow for a more precise idea of things like the yield amplification factors and break-even and rebounding time.
Yeah, maybe just to add to it is that for any given price, I mean, once we have the market price, there is this reference point. The front end will kind of calculate the optimal time to, and first of all, the time when you break even, and then also the optimal time to do this rebounding mechanism that Brice just explained. But this, of course, is based on the price, which will fluctuate. So the estimations will also be kind of need to be updated as the price changes. Even though there is an interesting built-in mechanism that tries to make it so that the optimal rebound time is around 30 days. So there is a controller that changes some of the parameters of the curve inside the system, like the speed of your B token accrual or BLUSD accrual, which should kind of target these 30 days. So if bonding becomes less attractive over time, the system will try to make bonding more attractive by speeding up kind of the bond accrual speed. So we'll see how that pans out. I think this is a very interesting experiment also from a controller perspective.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because it's a bit of a almost of a living thing, I want to say, So it's really it's a high level way to describe it would be it's an engine to capture liquidity over time and also provide an interesting earning opportunity for LUSD holders in the process. But it goes in cycles. So right now it was launched yesterday, and it will take about a month to go through the first cycle of bonds. But then there will be many cycles after that. So it's really fascinating to see how it will evolve.
Guys, one last thing I think we haven't covered is there then a curve BLUSD LUSD pool, and then is there any incentives or like at this point, if you were to be an LP in that, you are you're, I would say, an early LP in what could be a pool that
You
sees a lot of
cannot
trade
even be an
volume.
LP right now because of what we were saying in the bootstrap period. You cannot claim, so you simply
Yep.
don't have BLUSD. But yeah, eventually there is this pool. So it's an interesting one because it's BLUSD against the LUSD 3 pool. So it enables you to swap easily from BLUSD to LUSD, but also any token of the 3 pool.
Very cool.
And this pool is powered or incentivized by a 3% chicken-in fee. So that's maybe also important to say that this fee will be paid out to these LPs and will kind of also help to acquire enough LUSD liquidity to keep the whole system liquid, so that people can.
And it's interesting because it creates another dynamic within the system where, when people chicken ins, this fee is captured but directed to the LPs. So essentially, when there are a lot of chicken ins, there is a lot of incentives to be an LP too. So it will make for, in a month from now, when the bonds are mature and a lot of people are ready to chicken in, it would be an interesting time to be an LP. So I think it should balance. I think, both should balance out nicely between people who are looking to claim the bond to sell for more USD and rebound. Those will simply exit with a profit and maybe do something else. And those who will look more into the liquidity providing opportunities. Maybe one thing we kind of overlooked too, I'm realizing it now, is that you can also simply buy BLUSD off the market. And that gives you access to the yield amplification and everything. You don't get the NFT, sadly. It's only if you bond, but still. But of course, buying off the market is much more dependent of what is the market price at the time of your purchase.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I held a bunch of BLUSD and I needed, my LUSD back, maybe like the markets are crashing, I need to pay back my trove, which is, in case anyone doesn't know, it's kind of like a CDP in Maker or a vault in Maker. I'm trying to think why would I sell it on the market versus chicken out? Is there what's the factors there that I would consider?
Yeah, so that's another part, like that would be the redemption. So I mean, when you just own the BLUSD, you are entitled to redeem them for LUSD. But given the premium through the yield amplification, we expect that the actual market price would never or very rarely drop below the value that you would get upon a redemption. So you don't really want to redeem, because by selling it on the secondary market, you would usually get a higher price. So that's for BLUSD owners. Chicken out is for the bonders.
Makes sense. Yeah. No. This is a really interesting new opportunity in DeFi. I'm excited to play with this myself. So this interview was more for selfish intentions. I was joking with you earlier today that I just really wanted to learn more about this myself. Guys, anything else that you think we haven't covered?
Well, maybe just the part that we have this kind of built-in mechanism for shifting the funds, because under the hood, whatever is in those 3 buckets can be, or at least a part of it can be shifted between Liquidity's own stability pool and the curve pool of the LUSD token. And this would happen in a smart way. So this would happen in a way that kind of drives the price back to peg. So that's also the reason why we built it, because we wanted to have an additional layer of stability on top of the current LUSD or Liquidity protocol. But Brice, you wanted to say something else, I guess.
Yeah, no, I was pretty much about to talk of the same topic. So the impact longer term of chicken bonds on the curve pool that, as you can see right now, is is a bit unbalanced. But thanks to the shifting function, essentially, as long as LUSD is overpegged, anyone would be able to redirect the permanent bucket to the curve pool. It should also prove interesting to contribute to the yield amplification of the system, because this curve LP position will also be producing a yield. And well, long story short, because we're already at the end, but there is a massive boost coming to the incentives of the curve LUSD3 pool, because there was a bribing campaign, and tomorrow the new round of Gauge reward on curve starts.
Nice. Could you zoom in on the split between BLUSD and LUSD on that one pool? I heard
Oh,
you
no.
mention
So
it.
this is LUSD 3 CRV pool. Again, the
That's
BLUSD
right.
pool is created, but it cannot be funded yet because there's now
That's right.
BLUSD
Not
existence in the
until
bootstrap period. Yeah.
not until November 5th then, right? That's when we should see
No,
more
a bit
liquidity.
earlier, because people can
Oh, okay.
will already be able to chicken in earlier if they want. But yeah. The cool thing too
Cool.
is during that period, the whole yield of the system. So, because all three buckets are making yield, and it's all redirected to the reserve. And the reserve also gets funded when people chicken in, so as a permanent bucket. But since right now they cannot chicken in, everything is in pending, but there is already a bit of LUSD balance occurring in the reserve. That's a yield redirected by the pending bucket. So this first harvest was yesterday and 90 LUSD, but today's harvest, or I don't know exactly what the frequency is when it's relevant, should be a bit bigger.
And those terms that we're using there, chicken out, we could replace with withdraw. Withdraw early. Is that appropriate? And then when we say chicken in, maybe like restake or like claim and redeposit, is that fair?
Yeah, or make cancel and claim, I think, are clearer. If chicken in and chicken out are a bit confusing for you. But I guess really the main idea is first that both are mutually exclusive. So it's a choice, either or. Now, as time goes, it becomes more interesting to claim because you're accruing BLUSD over time. And so it becomes increasingly more costly, essentially, to cancel, even if there is no cost to cancel. But, if I cancel a bond I created yesterday, today, I've just lost 1 day of opportunity cost of capital. If I cancel the same bond 25 days from now, I've now lost 25 days of opportunity cost of capital, 25 days of yield I could have had if I parked my LUSD somewhere else. So it's really an escape hatch offering a protection. But if you're looking for a return, that's the way of the claim bond and then doing something with your BLUSD.
Makes sense. And while none of this is financial advice or recommendation or endorsement to make any sort of investment decision, I personally learn a lot more by just putting some money in. So like whether I put in 10 LUSD, I create a bond, or actually remind me, the minimum is it 100 LUSD?
100.
There we go. So I would put in, let's say in my world, I would put in 100, and then that will help me to learn through experience.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do it when when you have a 5-way gas period, essentially. And because of what we were saying earlier of the permit, it won't cost you too much. You only have one TX to sign to be able to create a bond. And we're talking about BLUSD, but just to finish on a funny note that happened just a few hours ago, you can also the bond NFT you can transfer, you can sell. And we actually saw the first resale of an NFT today. So it was this egg, the bond number 100, with about 330 LUSD in there. That sold for 0.6 ETH. So a nice premium. We're not exactly sure of what was the the reason for this guy paying such a premium. Maybe he really wanted number 100. Maybe he's not clear about the system yet. Who knows? But still interesting to see it happens.
And in
cool.
general, I would recommend, or anybody who looks into this, I mean, it wouldn't put you like the whole amount in one bond. It always makes more sense to kind of have multiple smaller ones just to be able to react and like split your funds.
Yeah, I mean, we see different strategies with the depositors. Quite a few people are splitting the bond indeed, because essentially the X size, the max X size is obtained starting at 100K. So you'll see people splitting the bond quite often to get a bit more flexibility in the choice. But we also have seen some quite massive bonds. So I'm trying to find one. But yeah, there is this one, for instance. And with 500,000 LUSD in there. And sometimes some really, because of the weight generation work, we can see some really cool things happening. So the biggest bond of the platform is in a rainbow egg right now. I can't remember the ID, but if I can find it, I will show it to you.
Yeah, really interesting use of NFTs here. The fact that you've got that NFT because it's a unique position, but I do love just the creativity that's gone into this. They're fun to look at. Maybe some of these will take off as a profile pic eventually in the future.
Yeah, I mean, those eggs are the most basic stage of the NFT. When people will chicken in and chicken out the NFT, they have evolved. But this part is not live yet. It will be live when the bootstrap period is over. But yeah, I think we have some rendering of how the egg can evolve over here to give you a bit of an idea.
That is really cool. I didn't realize that they're evolving. You were saying so they change over time the longer you hold that?
No, not over time. They change in a one-time process when you chicken in or chicken out. Essentially, the
that
visual
makes
of your
sense.
NFT evolve.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. It's like I said, it's just a really fun brand. And reminder to everyone then, if you want to check this out and learn more about it, you can go to chickenbonds.org. Guys, if they had questions and wanted to interact more with the community, they should go to the Liquidity Discord, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we have a chicken bonds section now in our Discord to chat about everything related to chicken bonds. So yeah, they can join here.
Very cool. And I don't have the link up here, but that would be Liquidity, LIQUITY.org. That's another great resource to learn more about. And then they've got all the front ends listed there for Liquidity as well. And then just quick reminder too that you can follow both Robert and, man, have I been mispronouncing your name? I keep saying Bryce, like the ultimate American burger. Or do you pronounce it Brice?
I take both.
That's it. Okay. So I've lived up to being, the burger in the house today. So, but yes. So thanks so much, guys, for taking the time to talk me through all of this. Like I said, I think it's a really ideal sort of DeFi product to have launched in this market. This is a market where we're all looking for stablecoin based yields. There's some interesting opportunities coming there once folks are claiming BLUSD with the curve pools as well. I guess I'll leave you with the last word. Anything else either of you wanted to share or say before we go?
Yeah, before we wrap up, I just realized on the NFT, I forgot to mention this part, but for those who are interested in trying out the chicken bonds, there will be also some on-chain activities that will be checked. So when you get your chicken in NFT, the one you see on the right here, you can gain additional attributes depending of what you have done on chain. And we look for three main activities, which are having a trove open on Liquidity, owning or staking Liquidity, and then voting for the curve LUSD 3CRV pool with VCRV tokens. So any of those three actions will give you additional attributes on your chicken in NFT. So if you want to try the app, that's also one thing to consider.
Really cool. Very clever stuff.
The mention is like if you want to be a part of this big experiment or game of chicken, I think this is a good chance to check it out. I mean, we'll see how it evolves. I mean, it will be just fun to see all the reactions in the market, how they would like price it. And yeah, with that, I think it was a great interview. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us around. And just sorry to add one more thing, but I realized I forgot. It's also an interesting case because the curveball I mentioned, we are bribing regularly with just bribes on Warden. But so essentially right now you get a kind of a double bribe where you get a regular token bribe, but also an NFT based bribe essentially where if you do this, you will get additional attributes on your chicken in NFT. So I don't think that has been ever tried before. And I'm kind of curious to see if you want to have a serious impact on the voters' behavior.
Yeah, no, a lot of experimentation in terms of keeping the community engaged and incentivized, and this is really fun. It is, at the end of the day, I'm looking at it as a game, and I am interested to see just how quickly this can actually grow. But guys, again, my pleasure to have you on. I'm such a fan of what has been built with Liquidity. I think this is a really interesting next generation product. Another example of a rich product that gets created because we have a very reliable lower stack protocol that is Liquidity. And so this is, to me, what's going to really propel us into, God willing, whenever that next bull market comes. I think we're going to see some really interesting applications because we already have Liquidity, we already have Aave, we already have Maker, and so on, and in Uniswap and Curve. So this is kind of the next generation of experimentation. And then just a reminder to everyone too, if you enjoyed this, you can subscribe at defidad.com. I would really encourage you, go to LensTube, and you can follow this interview and watch any other interview now on LensTube, which is Web3 media powered by Lens Protocol. And yeah, just trying to dog food really what I think is the future there of Web3 media. But otherwise, I'll end the broadcast here. And just like I said, thanks again for your time, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So much.
Bye, everyone. Take care.